In a small town in Ohio. People didn't notice it at first because nothing about it looked unusual. No alarms, no sudden panic, no headlines breaking overnight. Just one woman gone. Then another, and then another. Quietly, without warning, they started disappearing. Some were later found, left in places just outside town, along back roads, in wooded areas, like they had been forgotten. Others were never found at all. And the most unsettling part isn't just that it happened. It's how long it kept happening before anyone truly stopped and asked why. This is Mystery Trails, and I'm Scott. Today, we're heading into Chillicothe, Ohio, a place that, on the surface, looks like any other quiet American town. But over the course of just a few years, it became the center of a growing fear, a pattern that people couldn't ignore, and a mystery that, even now, has never been fully explained. Because when you step back and look at it all together, one question refuses to go away. Was this coincidence? Or was something happening in that town that no one wanted to admit? Chillicothe sits quietly along the Scioto River in southern Ohio. On the surface, it's the kind of town that feels familiar the moment you drive through it. The kind of place where people recognize your face at the gas station, where neighbors still talk, and where life doesn't move quite as fast as it does in bigger cities. It feels steady, predictable. But if you stay there long enough, or talk to the right people, you start to realize there's another side to it. Because like a lot of small towns across America, there are struggles just beneath the surface. Drug use, poverty, people trying to get by, and sometimes falling through the cracks when they can't. And in places like that, it doesn't take much for someone to disappear. Not a loud moment, not a big scene, just gone. And sometimes it takes longer than it should for anyone to realize they're missing at all. Between 2014 and 2015, something started happening in Chillicothe. At first, it didn't look like a pattern. It looked like separate incidents, unrelated cases. Just another name here, another name there. But then, people started noticing something that didn't sit right. The ones going missing were women, and most of them had something in common. They were struggling. Some were battling addiction. Some were trying to rebuild their lives. Others were living right on the edge, doing what they could just to get through the day. And because of that, they were vulnerable, easy to overlook, easy to dismiss. One of the first names people remember is Charlotte Trigo. She disappeared, and when she was finally found, it wasn't the ending anyone hoped for. She was dead. Not long after that, more names started to surface. Wanda Lemons, Shasta Himmelrich, Tiffany Sayer. Each case came with its own story, its own circumstances, different locations, different timelines, different official explanations. But when you take a step back and look at all of them together, you start to see something that's hard to ignore. Women going missing, some later found in rural, isolated areas. And the causes of death? In many cases, unclear, questioned, or quietly labeled in ways that didn't sit right with the families. And then, more names were added, one after another, until it stopped feeling like coincidence and started feeling like something else entirely. As time went on, people in Chillicothe started connecting the dots. What once felt like separate tragedies began to feel like something tied together. Before long, at least 6 women were being spoken about as part of the same story. A name started to circulate, quiet at first, then louder as more people began asking questions. The Chillicothe Missing Women. And that's when things shifted, because now, this wasn't just about individual cases anymore. This was about a pattern. Families of the women began to speak out. They weren't convinced this was random, not this many, not this close together, not under these kinds of circumstances. To them, something else was happening, something deliberate, something that didn't feel like coincidence. Some believed there was a serial killer operating in or around the area. Others suspected something even more complex, maybe trafficking, or a network of people who knew far more than they were willing to admit. And when you listen to those families, you can hear it in their voices. This wasn't just grief. It was frustration. It was the feeling that something important was being missed, or worse, ignored. But despite all of that, law enforcement never officially confirmed that the cases were connected. No public statement tying them together. No acknowledgement of a larger pattern. At least, not on record. And that only made the questions grow louder. Then in 2015, everything changed. Up until that point, people could still tell themselves these were separate cases, unrelated, just a series of unfortunate events. But that illusion didn't last, because that year, 3 bodies were discovered in a rural area just outside Chillicothe. Not miles and miles apart, not scattered across different counties, right there in the same general area. And that's when the fear really settled in. Because now, this wasn't just about missing persons reports. This wasn't just names on flyers or faces shared on social media. This was real, physical, undeniable. And once people saw that, they couldn't unsee it. The conversations changed, the tone changed, and the questions started getting louder. How does this happen in a town this size? How do this many women go missing, one after another, in such a short span of time without a clear answer, without someone stepping forward and saying what's really going on? And for a lot of people, that's when it stopped feeling like coincidence and started feeling like something much darker. Despite the investigations and all the growing public pressure, no one was ever definitively charged as a serial killer in connection to these cases. No single suspect, no clear answer, just pieces that never fully came together. Some of the deaths were officially ruled overdoses. Others were labeled as non-suspicious, closed, at least on paper. But for the families, those explanations didn't sit right. Not with how many women were involved, not with how close together it all happened, and not with how many questions were left hanging. Because when you look at the bigger picture, it doesn't feel simple. And that's what continues to haunt this story. Even now, years later, the same questions are still there. Were these women being targeted? Was there someone moving quietly through that town? Someone who knew exactly who was vulnerable and how to take advantage of it? Or is the truth something even harder to face? That in some communities, certain lives don't get the same urgency, the same attention, the same resources, and because of that, things can happen and go unanswered far longer than they should. And maybe that's the most unsettling part of all, not just what happened, but how easily it could happen again. Even now, the story hasn't really gone away. It still lingers in Chillicothe, not always out in the open, not always talked about every day, but it's there. Because when something like this happens, when multiple people disappear and no clear answers ever come, it doesn't just fade with time. It leaves something behind, something heavier than fear. Fear can pass. Fear has a moment, and then it moves on. But uncertainty uncertainty stays. It settles into a place. So now we want to hear from you. When you look at everything that happened in Chillicothe, the disappearances, the locations, the timing, what do you think? Do you believe this was just a series of unrelated tragedies? Or do you think there was something more going on? Something organized, something hidden, something that was never fully uncovered? And if you've ever lived in a small town, you know how quickly people notice when something feels off. So how did this go on for so long without clear answers? Let us know what you think down in the comments. If you're drawn to real stories like this, the ones that don't have easy answers, the ones that stay with you long after they're over, make sure you subscribe to Mystery Trails, because out here, there are still cases that haven't been solved. Still places where something happened and no one can fully explain it. And every now and then, we find one that makes you stop and wonder, what else is still out there, waiting to be uncovered?